Okay, so should we jump in and let everybody see what happened and
I think we should, brother.
Enjoy our chat with brilliant propaganda.
The main reason at the time we wanted to leave was Paul Morley.
Let's look at your past legal issues. They're being signed to a progressive new label like Bureau B must be quite liberating for you guys, and hopefully they've given you a lot more creative freedom because they believe in you, right?
Yeah. Yeah, when we finished the record, because we were always thinking about a record, like an album, vinyl, we were thinking what label would allow us to have it out on vinyl with the artwork that we have made here in Düsseldorf by people we knew. And we realized something like Bureau B would be the best company for that. They are small, but with a major label, we could have asked Universal, for example, we wouldn't be, first of all, we wouldn't be number one, and they wouldn't really understand the issues we have with the layouts, with the different formats, because we wanted to have it out as long as it's still possible in a physical format. So I'm not sure if in 5 years' time that's still possible.
I hope so. I mean, you're talking to two vinyl purists, and most of the people on the Electronic Cafe are all very much vinyl junkies like us. So we're really pleased that you have the same emotion and passion for that. I mean, Mark and I talked to all our guests about this. You know, the trouble with an MP3 download, there's no physical connection. It's whereas, as you say, you talked about the creative, Ralph, and the actual copy to hold it and embrace it and understand it.
Absolutely.
It's a much better experience.
When I listened to albums, I mean, I was looking at the cover artwork for hours.
Exactly.
I mean, I was studying the people there, and, you know, question came into my mind, you know, who are they and what, you know, all sort
100%.
of association, you know.
Yeah, I can tell you, I bet you're the same as me and Mike. The amount of albums I've bought just because I like the look of the cover, of the artwork, it's made me curious.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we have been pretty lucky with regard to our artwork, because the motif you see on the front, that I discovered by chance a couple of years ago at a place of a guy who had photos, portraits of myself for a book on Düsseldorf musicians. And I kept that in mind, that he had this artistic side. And we were lucky that he didn't use these things somewhere else over this period of a few years. And then we have been pretty lucky that Michael knew somebody on the design level that could actually translate it, what we wanted, into the artwork. And all that happened in Düsseldorf. We didn't need the, let's say, hip-in people from London as in the past, because everything nowadays is available if you're lucky at your home base. You just have to look around.
There's a lot of labor of love involved here. I mean, the guy, Stefan Baggen, who did his company did the artwork. I mean, that's like, you know, he's a kind of, we're friendly with, I know him for 30 years, right? And we spent time, we went to have holidays together. We're kind of on a friendly level, but still, you know, it's not, you don't go asking somebody just because he's a friend if he would like to do a big job for you without money. You know, we don't have any, you don't do that, you know. But we kind of asked, and he was a big propaganda fan. He said, "Look, it's my pleasure to do this." And there's a lot of labor of love also on the.
Facing the tidal wave, there is no time to waste. No riches worth saving. We're blinded by light. There's no place to hide. Tipping point.
We were very extremely lucky, you know, to get all these people, and also to see, like, okay, Thunder Bay, our singer, you know, she is a very she's very interested in making videos. She does our videos, and she has a talent. She sits like for a week on Final Cut Pro and edits the hell out of it until a video comes out. I mean, if you would put that into a post-production, you couldn't pay for it, you know. Everyone worked on a very, very small budget, if any, you know.
Oh, yeah.
So we were very lucky in that respect that this actually worked out. And also with Natalie, I have to say, you know, we were very lucky to have met her. Big coincidence, and I think she will leave her mark in her own way, and the fact that she's from a different generation is even more of a bonus, because it kind of, you know, there's this tension, you know. She said, look, the music you guys are doing, I would never do a song like that. I would never do music like that. But I have to admit, I love it. It's very exciting. I find it extremely interesting to see what you are doing. And she, with her approach, she adds to it in quite a big way, you know.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate her as an artist. And we see each other eye to eye. You know, it's not like, okay, there's these old guys, electronic from big time 40 years ago, and there's a small singer somehow. You know, it's not like that at all. We're on a level.
Leaving trails of grime, a whisper in the darkness, rousing the rats in the walls. Have been waiting for you. Can you resist their calls? Nameless, and they keep calling me.
Guys, can I touch on the point briefly? Obviously, Susanne and Claudia brought out an album a couple of years ago under the name of xPropaganda, and they also toured under the name of Duel. And it's documented that you guys tried to reform in 2014, but it didn't happen. You guys are doing this. The girls are doing their projects as well. There's two very separate camps still, isn't there? From us, from the music fans that love propaganda, there feels like there's two separate camps, and you're doing your own thing and they're doing their own thing, and there's loose ends. But I mean, you wasn't involved in their project, and likewise they wasn't involved in your project. I mean, do you ever foresee anything in the future, or are they separate items now?
It's always a thing about how much information you have, and I have to admit, I had a lot of information about what they were doing when they were interviewed in England to push this record, which Michael didn't notice, but I'm near to the scenes because I have fans also from the group side who are watching that. And I think somehow what they managed to, what they did in the media, they more or less totally denied our existence, which I think is ridiculous. And the way it happened, you know, they were pretty keen, or I'm not sure about saying they. I think Claudia was always pretty keen to join this retro set. Maybe that is because she was together with Paul Humphreys, who joined the retro set with OMD. Maybe it's because she's friend with Glenn Gregory, who is part of the retro set with Heaven 17. And maybe it's because this retro set in England is really like a financial bank. If you join it, and most of the acts from the 80s did it, you have an income. And that was the thing. When actually we were talking about some sort of reunion, there was again a sort of anniversary of A Secret Wish coming up. At that time, the rights of the record were not with Universal, but before that it was BMG. And BMG came up somehow, we would like to do a new edition of the album. Couldn't you promote it live? And since then, this topic of playing live old material, this retro issue, even using old backing tapes, That, I think, was not what I had in mind, or that we had in mind. And this is why all these talks failed.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, we appreciate that. We appreciate your honesty. I mean, it's a subject which obviously is very sensitive, but we thought we'd ask the question anyway.
Yeah, we even became a bit more sensitive because they had more or less, they did what they wanted to do, like joining this retro set, naming themselves Duel. But then suddenly they wanted to use the name Propaganda. They even more or less were keen on buying it. I mean, we know that it's a trademark. I know that it's my trademark because I started it. And I know that they left pretty early in the 80s. So I'm not part of the setup, of this mindset to go just commercial, to make a few bucks and play old stuff, but we're using old sounds and waving. I mean, but there's a scene about it. I admit I don't mind some people doing it. I prefer it like Heaven 17 did it when they started with the Steel City tour. They played old material but newly arranged. I liked that. But that at that time was not the issue when this Propaganda talk started.
Thank you, mate. Appreciate that.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
See them fall, strong and beautiful. No one could run. Find me a thing of wonder. Asking how much love.
On to more joyous. Like, I'm sorry, I'm going to nick one of your questions here. But there's the new vocalist. I think you mentioned it earlier, Michael, in terms of Thunder Bay. How did you guys connect? Because I think Mark was saying to me, he think it was a lucky accident when me and Mark
Yeah, it was actually. I had a small studio in a building where there was another studio run by an old friend of mine, which I know from my days of studying music. He was studying also at the same academy. And he ran a bigger studio. I had a smaller production facility down there. And he said to me, look, he knew I was writing material. And he said, you can use my studio when there's downtime if you want to have a bigger audio system to listen to, because he had that. So I went up there. Nowadays it's easy, just take a hard drive up there. He's running Pro Tools. I'm running Pro Tools. It's all compatible. And he got a real recording area, a proper one, which I didn't have. And so I spent a lot of time up there when the studio was free. And Natalie, that's her name, Thunderbird, her name is Natalie. She was hanging around the studio because she was doing a project. She was trying to get a project going with Peter, the studio owner. When I write songs, I also write the melodies, and I sing the melodies into a microphone in order to memorize what I think the song should be. Then I refine it. Now, I'm a terrible singer. I cannot sing, but I can find melodies. I do find melodies. And when I sing in, I correct everything with Melodyne, so everything sounds proper and it sounds good. But I still need, like, we're writing for a female singer, and I wanted to hear how it sounds like when it's sung by a woman. So I asked Natalie if she would do me a favor, quickly do a session and try to learn the song and then record this. And she was happy to do that because for her it was experience. She was like young, 19, 20, in that age. She said, yeah, would I love to do that.
That means it was years ago. She's now nearly 25.
She's 24.
Just talking about years ago.
She's 24. So she did that. And then, yeah, thank you very much. And it sounded great. And I was happy. And and Ralf had the original concept was that he thought, look, we should work with 3 different singers.
Yeah, something, like, let's say, in a way like Nouvelle Vague or Massive X, to work with a pool of different voices.
So, to cut it short, what happened was I asked Natalie again to do this kind of demo. I said, look, this is going to be sung by somebody else probably, but you do me a big favor if I can hear it sung by a woman, by a female voice. And then once we had the third song with her, we kind of sat down and listened, and it was like, I don't know if I want another singer. You know, it started to grow on you. It was like, this is kind of interesting. On top of that, I mean, there was like, we had already had one song recorded with somebody else, and when we decided that it's gonna be Natalie, then I had to re-record the entire track because of the key wasn't fitting for it. But also what Ralf mentioned earlier, the COVID thing came along, and the idea to get somebody to travel to Düsseldorf to record became virtually impossible. But then that coincided with the realization that we actually didn't want another singer. We really started to like her, and she fitted our music really well. So that's really how it came about.
The 3 singles we've heard so far, they sound fantastic.
Thank you.
They're brilliant. They're great vocals, really great.
Yeah, I think she's good. I mean, she sings from the heart a lot. You know, she comes really.
And you obviously felt that when you heard it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like, at the beginning, the first time I thought, yeah, thank you. Now I have
Thank you, goodbye.
Thank you.
We call you.
You know,
Next.
I buy you a pizza, you know, whatever. You know. But then it took some time till it dawns on you. You suddenly realize, whoa, well, this is.
Yeah, it's complete fate, isn't it?
Ich schaue in die Stuben durch Tür und Fensterglas und ich warte auf etwas. Wenn ich mir was wünschen dürfte, käme ich in Verlegenheit, was ich mir denn wünschen sollte.
I don't know if you are any plans to play any live shows for this album, or
a bit too early, I think.
Okay.
To leave it, because we just have this 8 tracks, and
Yeah, the other thing, the expectations nowadays, not just of the fans, the audience, but also of the bookers. They want you to play the hits. To follow our path, it would mean we had to totally rework the hits.
Yeah.
And we gave a hint on the album. We have a version, a reworked song from 1, 2, 3, 4, that's Vicious Circle, where we actually use something from the past to provide a link, but with our nowadays tools and refinements. We wouldn't like to disappoint an audience, but also we wouldn't like to follow the trend and just more or less use historic sounds, historic arrangements and wave, because some people still like that. But we are not DJs or like jukeboxes.
we need to see how it develops, really.
I understand.
Goes on with the album, and you never know. I mean, I have a bit of a maybe slightly different view than Ralf towards if there's ever any kind of collaboration with Claudia and Susanne. I'm not totally ruling that out. Although I have to say, when Ralf pointed out some of the stuff that was being said, I was not very happy about it. I mean, you don't promote yourself by putting somebody else down. You just
100%. No, I think that's a very honest answer. Thank you, James.
But I mean, that door isn't entirely closed for me. I mean, I went to see Susanne on a private level a year ago, a bit over a year ago, and it was fine, you know. And we had a great time together, and we had a very intense time together. And I'm not the guy who's totally alienating somebody. You know?
I am the one. I'm strict.
For me, it's just like, okay, 2 tears in a bucket.
I understand. I understand both sides. Both sides make total sense.
You know, life sometimes has its own.
Yeah, Michael even isn't. I mean, have you read Taverhorn's book?
No.
Ah, okay.
I think Mark has. Have you read it, Mark?
Yeah,
because it's funny that Michael is pretty much featured compared to other people that Trevor Horn met over the times. But I think there's no Angel involved. But it's interesting to see how Trevor Horn is seeing that.
It's just, I had to laugh, when I heard what he, how angry he is about me. And, it's the thing is, my father he ran a supermarket, he was a merchant, I like to eat, there's nothing wrong with that.
But one thing I think we wanted to use the channel to make something clear, because in the interviews that Trevor Horn does or Steve Lipson does, it's always saying Michael or we, the guys, have been greedy when they wanted to leave ZTT. The main reason at that time we wanted to leave was Paul Morley. And what he did behind our backs, what kind of wrong information he would put on the records, or what kind of damaging quotes he used in his promotion. And we had the big problem that Claudia was married to Paul Morley. And the other issue was that our lawyer at that time said, that is not a legal issue to complain about an employee of the company. The only point that has a legal substance is the points, the payment, and what is more or less the financials. So the focus always was on the financials, on these official terms. But for us, we really had the big problem at ZTT starting sometime in 1985, big time in 1986 with Paul Morley.
It was difficult.
Yeah, got you. Yeah. I've read that stuff, and I feel for you, because it's But we move forward. I know you mentioned the joy of making this new album. How long did that album? I guess this album's been in transition, as you quite rightly said, Ralph, with people over the last 20 years, right? It's been
but I mean, when we started in 2012, there was again coming actually more or less from the outside, from Stephen Lipson, was an impulse. He said like he wanted to bring back the original setup. He called me up, Claudia called me up before. I said, look, Stephen wants to talk to you, and he has this idea. And then we went.
I think Claudia was the trigger.
Yeah, but I don't know. Could be. Yeah.
I think it was Claudia using Stephen.
Yeah, it could be. I don't exactly know, but I was talking to Stephen, and I thought, well, if Stephen Lipson is involved, I always got on great with him. I thought this is worth looking into, and we started to write stuff, Ralph lyrics. I did some music. We started to demo stuff, but it's a long story. But I don't want to go into it. It didn't work out in the end. But some of the material which is on this record is from those days. Purveyor of Pleasure. And the Call Me Nocebo was from that period. And some of the basic ideas, conceptually, stem from them. But they've been Purveyor of Pleasure was pretty much written the way it is.
For example, Tipping Point is the same title as Tears for Fears, but it was done a few years before that.
I got you. Okay. Look, I mean, this album's been produced. Did you ever think about? I guess, was it always going to be under the Propaganda, or was it ever going to be a Ralph and Michael album, or was it always going to be? No, this is going to be Propaganda.
It was not always. As Ralph said, the realization that the perception of what Propaganda is different depending on the geographic space where you are. But also we felt like, okay, the ill-binding element of all the Propaganda records, is, I don't want to blow my own trumpet here, but it's a writing.
Yeah.
That's the continuation, is the lyrics and the music.
Guys, growing up, I mean, you come from very different musical paths. I mean, Michael, you was like a classical percussionist in an orchestra. Ralf, you played in Die Krupps, still in Die Krupps, in an industrial synthesizer band. But what was your influences in music growing up? I mean, how did you get to this point and, in fact, meeting and propaganda beginning?
I've been part of the German punk scene that actually developed in Düsseldorf. And I was, in the very beginning, I was not looking at what guys in New York, the Ramones, or the guys in London did, what mostly was guitar music. I was writing for a fanzine. That was my involvement in the scene, where all the other guys started to have punk bands. Yeah. And for me, the initial was actually like a trigger was the release of The Normal, Warm Leatherette.
Love that.
Seeing Fat Gadget playing live in the Ratinger Hof, the punk club here in Düsseldorf, and realizing that doing synthesizer music doesn't mean you have to wear a tie and stand behind your keyboard, because Fat Gadget, Frank was like Iggy Pop, what he did. And at the same time, you suddenly got this cheaper electronic instrument from Japan, because before that, all the electronics coming from the US were totally expensive. And the stuff from Japan coming from Korg, from Roland, you could afford. And so, inspired by the record and what I've seen, I started. And the first thing that I did actually was not very punky, because my first single that came out in Düsseldorf on an independent label was inspired by film music, by soundtrack music. So the first single was actually like a double feature inspired by the music of John Carpenter and David Lynch. And now the big connection, this one I sent to England, I sent it to John Peel, I sent it to The Enemy. John Peel played it. I got Single of the Week in England with that record. And due to that, I had this contact or this link to England. And due to that, I always thought when we do propaganda, we do not ask people in Germany, no record companies in Germany, we go straight to London, because that is more or less the best base. So we were lucky to end up with ZTT. I would have gone to Rough Trade as well, or to Mute at that time, because that was more or less where I saw myself musically home. It was quite important at that time, as I was part of a scene that was around a club. And so in that scene, I've never seen Michael. And you come up why that was.
You know, I mean, I'm old enough to being able to admit I grew up with the Beatles and the Stones. As a kid, I heard one track on the radio, which it dawned on me that there's something out there which I don't know yet. Kind of exciting. Yeah. There was a Telstar from Joe Meek, you know, that track. That hit me when I was really early on. And I was like, oh, wow, this is interesting. Another important, well, there's many important things. Obviously, Pink Floyd was important. What I really loved, which hit me, which I became part of my musical DNA, is a soundtrack for Performance, which was produced by Jack Nietzsche. Yes. You know, this is where I've actually heard Moog synths probably for the first time in a very interesting way. Yep. It's the first time I heard a rap, you know, which is The Last Poets, you know, and Mary Clayton, and you know, I mean, it was like amazing record. And much later, I realized that probably my favorite producer would be Jack Nietzsche. You know, I loved what he did. You know, his entire oeuvre and his way of what all the different things he did. I resonate with that very much. You know, then the soundtrack for 2001 or the Ligeti things, they triggered my interest more in classical music, you know. And I was like, yeah, this is very interesting. And I'm very eclectic, you know. For example, when once I started studying music, first I thought I was going to go into the jazz world as a vibraphone player, but I kind of didn't. So I studied classical percussion. And in that period, I totally finished listening to any pop music. I was not interested at all, you know. I was like, when I met Ralf, and he told me about his project he's planning to do, or he started to do, and he brought me a few cassettes the second time we met, and he said, you should listen to this, should listen to that, which was like Heaven 17, Human League. You know, Let Me Go. I remember the 12-inch of Let Me Go. No, I never heard of any of that before. I had no idea who they were, but it was interesting because it was something I never heard before. It wasn't part. I was, you know, day by day I was playing in the orchestra, and we mainly played opera in Düsseldorf. I bought the funny thing. I bought a synthesizer. Because I had a problem with my right foot, right? When you play vibraphone and marimbaphone, you have to practice for 6-7 hours a day standing up. And I had a problem with my foot, and the doctor said, look, you can do this now, but if you're going to keep doing this, right, once you're 40, 50, you're going to end up with real problems, you know? So for some reason, I thought, yeah, well, I went into this. I had a salary from the opera, from the orchestra where I worked. So I bought an Oberheim OBXA, not knowing what to buy. So I bought this, and that was kind of made an impression on Ralf when he came to visit me. He was his room, marimba, huge marimba, vibraphone, and an OBXA synthesizer. Nobody has that.
And also, you know, I were under the impression, also because I was writing on music, that I knew more or less all the people in Düsseldorf who did some electronics, but I've never seen Michael. So that really triggered my interest as well. And this Oberheim, you know, I'm coming from, or most of the punk electronic people, they come from monophonic. That means one sound only, because that was the cheap equipment we could afford. And with the Oberheim, I realized, oh, polyphonic, harmonies, yes, atmospheres.
He's devoted to the devil, fascinated by crime. Glamorous death is his destination. Eternal passion, his game. Selling your soul, selling your soul, selling your soul. Never look back.
It's always really interesting how, you know, different backgrounds, different musical backgrounds. I mean, you know, the electronic punk side and the classical side, they come together and you create something new, which is distinctly the sound of propaganda. It's clever.
Punk passed me by 100%. I could not relate to any of it, you know. That's totally Ralf's department. I have no idea. I mean, I met Johnny Rotten. What's his real name? I met
Leiden.
Yeah, John Lydon. He was. We were managed by the same guy, Keith Borton, and Keith said, "Look, you know, come by today. You're gonna meet John Lydon. He's here. You know, you can meet him if you want." And I knew who he was, but I couldn't relate to it. And it was a very nice guy, very nice, decent.
Yeah,
but we had
that was in the 80s.
And yeah, but that was nice, you know.
You're not punk for a lifetime.
We were sitting there having coffee, having tea, you know, had a very decent conversation. He told me he had a German girlfriend, which he later married, and And it was a very nice conversation. I could not relate.
He wouldn't have talked to you in 1976.
I couldn't relate to his earlier works because I didn't know them.
It passes by. Yeah, mate, it's just life's journey, isn't it?
I met John Lydon a few years ago, and he was lovely. He was really funny. Had some pictures taken with him. He was brilliant.
Funny, polite, pleasant.
I mean, the punk thing in a way means, especially on the electronic side, working with do-it-yourself, working with a limited resource. As I said, I was not a Ramones guy or not a Clash guy. I was more interested in this early electronic stuff, including Throbbing Gristle, which inspired me a lot due to the noise elements. What also had inspired me in the 70s within Roxy music, that Eno was providing the noise, but that's not really what is something we listened or I listen to much nowadays. No, it's over the years, I do hardly listen to any vocal music at all. And that was something that led us to one idea that came up during recording, because I started to listen, especially during COVID, to a lot of instrumental music. Some call it neoclassical. And I also mentioned to Michael Hauschka I was listening to. And then he said, Hauschka, I know him. And we have on one track on the album, we have Hauschka. And that idea came up long before we knew about this Oscar he got or his soundtrack work.
We ask every guest this, and if you can't, I'll understand if you can't answer it, but Desert Island Disc. So if you had one album you could take on a desert island, what would it be?
Jesus.
That's the answer I normally get, Michael.
Yeah, I often got asked that. Normally I say it must be at least 3 different ones.
Okay.
But if I say one, it's nowadays I would settle with For Your Pleasure by Roxy Music.
Great shout.
Yeah,
I would never have guessed that. That's a great shout. Yeah, great shout.
I probably would choose a classical one.
I thought you might.
It lasts longer, it lasts.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Great answers. Gents, look, honestly, I know we've given us a lot of your time, but thank you so much for spending a Sunday afternoon with Mark and I. We're so grateful. And just, you guys are a huge part of our musical tapestry. So it's been an absolute honour for us today. And I hope we can do this again sometime. But we wish you nothing but massive success for the album. You totally deserve it, and we'll be supporting it. You'll sit on our channel, obviously on this interview. We're going to promote the shit out of it all over our channels as well. So, we think you guys are amazing. You're amazing guys, and thank you so much.
By the way, are you based in London?
Yeah, we're just outside London.
So next time we're in London, we try to set you up.
Yeah, definitely.
We'll take you for dinner.
We'd love to take you for dinner and just say thank you properly, but we'd love to do that. Thank you. Yeah, certainly from my point of view, the album, we've been fortunate enough to hear the album. It sounds amazing. Really looking forward to having a physical copy of it and playing it. But equally, if someone would have said to me and Andy in 1985 that we'd speak to you guys one day, we'd have probably been locked up for a lot. We'd never in a million years, because the Propaganda albums are so important to us, and to speak to you guys and to know you're bringing out new music and it's sounding so fantastic is a real honor. So thank you for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you so much. That's really great.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Cheers, guys. We'll see you soon.
Guys.